Welcome to the second episode of Getting to Know, a series which will provide an insight to an individual involved within football locally. On today's episode, we've got Leyah. Leyah is currently a player for Luton Town Ladies. Leyah, how are you?
I'm good, thank you.
Yourself? Good. And joining me to co-host is Steve Worrell. Steve is an FA coach mentor working within Bedfordshire. Steve, good to see you.
Yeah, good to see you, Emmerich. How you doing?
Yeah, good. Probably about the sixth time I've seen you this week.
Quite a few times this week, Emmerich.
Perfect. All right. So Leyah, we're gonna go right back to the start, and I want you to start by telling me your earliest memory in football.
Earliest memory in football, I'd say playing football just in general.
What was the first thing that you can really remember about football?
The first thing I can remember about football is probably just playing with my brothers in the garden. We have quite a long garden, it's like almost 100 foot. It was like, and I would say there we would just play football, 2v1s, morning, noon, night. Doesn't matter, winter. We had like sensor lights on, so it doesn't matter. We were just playing football there, and I think that's pretty much my earliest memory of playing football. And then after that, I'd say probably in primary school. There wasn't really a girls' team, I don't believe, but I just played with the boys on the playground and stuff. And I think that's pretty much my earliest memory of just getting involved with football.
So talk to me around. So you obviously said that you played at primary school. So whereabouts did you grow up? So we know, because obviously I don't know, and the listeners might not know. So where did you grow up?
I've grown up in Luton pretty much, my whole life, in and around Luton. I went to Southfields Primary School in Lucy Farm, so pretty much all local.
Yeah. I'm going to pass on to Steve for this because I'm the only Bedfordian out of you two, so I feel a bit left out.
Okay, well, not really. I mean, I'm a South Londoner really by trade. I've just emigrated to Luton in the latter stages of my life so far. But Leyah, you mentioned playing on the playground, and there wasn't, as you say, there wasn't a girls' football team, so you just played with the boys. So how does that, how was that received? How did that go down? Because, like, talking from my own experience, my daughter was the same. She wanted to play football, and she played, with her friends on the playground. And how did that go down? How from your own perspective, I know obviously you played with your brothers at home, but from your parents' perspective, how did they support you in terms of wanting to play football and your desire to play football?
I'd say there was nothing to it really. I just wanted to play football, so I didn't really care if it was with boys or girls or whatever. In school, I think it was kind of encouraged. They didn't really care either. Everyone kind of got involved. To be honest, even the girls kind of, one off of chance, would get involved as well. So it wasn't seen as a big thing. It was just, who wants to play? We've got numbers, let's play, kind of thing. And then I'll say outside of school, like my community of what I've grown up with as well, it was majority boys my age as well. So going to the park and picking up the ball, again, it was nothing. It was just, let's go play football. And doing that, maybe because I grew up with only two brothers, it was kind of seen as not a big deal, even though they are younger than me. It didn't really seem a big deal for that. And again, my parents, they just saw that I loved the sport, and we all just kind of got involved with the sport at the same time. So I think once my dad knew that I enjoyed it and he wanted us to get into a sport, in particular football, he literally took us all pretty much the same day and got us into a football team at the same club at the same time. So it was just, it wasn't a big thing about it.
So I mean, do you know what drove your passion for football? Obviously, as you say, you're the oldest child. You had you have two younger brothers. So was there just a passion that was in you, and did you have any role models that triggered that? Seeing players playing and thinking, I want to be like them, or I want to be as good as them.
I think, again, primary school, from what I remember, it was just like, I feel like, so my dad was a Liverpool supporter and he kind of pushed me into that even though I didn't end up as a Liverpool supporter, I think when we was watching football, I chose Arsenal, and I think that was based on Thierry Henry at the time. So I looked at Thierry Henry, saw him, and was just like, I kind of like football from then. And then from primary school, people collecting sticker books and stuff like that, kind of, I got involved with that as well. So it made you want to watch football and get more involved. And I think that's how it kind of stemmed of me actually enjoying football.
I just want to touch upon what you just mentioned there around you were saying around how there wasn't a girls' football team, and you're obviously really into it and you're playing with the boys all the time. So I'm really interested around this idea of opportunity, and particularly there's it's a hot topic within the FA, and it's one of their new strategies is to put equal opportunities for both girls and boys. So I'm really interested to know, and as a young female, and I'm sure it didn't phase you, but did you ever obviously have those points where you struggled for opportunity? You felt that you had a struggle for opportunity?
That's a good question. No, I don't think so. I did at the beginning. I don't think I really took it too seriously in terms of wanting to play in it competitively or grassroots or anything like that. I was just happy to play it on the playground, I think, at that time. So I never really sought for it outside of school or even as a school team. I did other sports in school as well, so it wasn't like just football I was looking to do.
Yeah.
So I don't think I felt like there wasn't an opportunity. No, I don't think so, to be honest.
Okay. Yeah. No, that makes sense. I suppose I can after talking to you for about 5 minutes, I can already see that you're a very driven individual, and I suppose that when we talk about barriers and stuff, I suppose you're probably someone that will go to whatever extent you have to do if it means doing something that you love. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I'll say so. I'm kind of reserved as well, so
Yeah.
I just think it's a kind of a battle of I want to do it, but shall I push myself kind of to do it? But yeah, if I really want to, I'll do that happily.
Yeah. So how much of an influence was I know you just spoke about your dad. So how much of an influence was your dad on that?
In terms of
In terms of giving you that, well, obviously you've mentioned about how he kind of helped you fall in love with the game and football from the professional side of it, but how much of an influence did he have on you sticking with football? Because we see loads of youngsters that will play when they're little, but once they get to the teenage years it drops out. So did he have much of an influence on you?
yeah, he would have an influence on all of us. I think when he said we're all going to be playing football, my younger brother was like, "Well, I don't want to play football," and he was like, "Well, what sport are you going to do then?" And he had no idea. He was like 5 at the time, and he was like, "I don't know," and he was like, "Well, you're doing football then." So it's kind of we're going to do a sport, and you're going to see it out until you can, kind of thing. And I think, to be honest, my love for the game is probably what kept me in it. Maybe if I didn't want to do it, they might have said, you don't have to do it. I think the fact that I enjoyed it kind of kept me in that. Also, him at the same time of us going to Luton Borough to play, he took up coaching for a men's job at the club. So seeing that as well, of him being involved in the club and seeing him coaching a men's team, and I would go and we would watch and help paint the changing rooms and stuff like that. So kind of just always being around it from him bringing us into it was, I guess, an influence as well.
Absolutely.
Sorry, I've got a cold.
That's all right.
So
Sorry, it's not a
I need
problem.
to
It's all right.
hydrate.
Yeah, no problem. So okay, so you obviously spoke about your dad and how he's kept you in football. Was there anyone else that you had that you felt was a key role model for you?
Playing football, or because I do coach as well, actually.
Okay, yeah. So playing or coaching, was it? If we focus more so around when you were younger and you
Okay,
were
yeah.
you were maybe you started playing. So throughout your teenage years or even earlier, was there like a key role model that you looked up to?
At the time, to be honest, at the time, I would say like Rachel Yankee. I know it's not a local one, but seeing her playing football, I think she was like the first person in the female game that I kind of like admired as a player. So kind of seeing her playing well and getting high in Arsenal, because I'm an Arsenal fan, as well as in England as well,
Yeah.
kind of motivation to, as a black person as well, women of colour, seeing her doing well as well is kind of like a role model in that sense, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, and I suppose it's we'll touch a bit more on it later, but it's that seeing is believing, isn't it?
Yeah.
The saying of that. Yeah, brilliant. So if there were, so let's move on now. So we've obviously gone from you being quite young. We talked about some of the influences on you, falling in love with the game. So let's talk about going through those teenage years. So did you play football within a team during those years?
Yeah, so as a teenager, I moved. So Luton Borough, I started playing football about 11 years old. And then I was there for at Luton Borough for 2 seasons. And then when at under 14s team, I moved to Luton Town Ladies, the youth section. And then that's when I moved there at about 13 years old, at under 14s. So that's when I moved there.
I mean, at that point, I think when you were sort of 13, at that point, girls had to stop playing with boys. That was the rule by the FA, I think. And so, I guess if you wanted to continue playing, you wanted to continue pursuing your passion, then you'd had to go and find a girls' team, I guess, to continue that. And then obviously, as you say, you then went to Luton Town Ladies. So when you joined Luton Town Ladies, what was it like? Obviously, you were used to playing with boys, and I'm guessing that would be, your brothers and stuff would be around. You've seen your dad around. Were there more girls that were black girls or in that setup, or were you the only black girl at the time, and did that how did that impact you, or did that not impact you at all? You just, because of your passion for it, you didn't see it as even anything to take notice of?
So I would say competitively, in grassroots, I have always played with girls. So at Luton Borough, I was in the girls team. It was just
Okay.
outside of football. I usually probably just played with the boys. So moving to Luton Town Ladies, it was because the team that I was folding. It was from 11. So at that time, it was 7-a-side, and then you go straight to 11-a-side.
Okay.
So there was trying to get players and stuff like that. It was hard for them. So we moved away, and then say why the reason I moved to Luton Town.
Yeah, and just what the environment was like there in terms of comparison to what it was like at Luton Borough.
So I would say it was my mum who got me into Luton Town. I think she met with Dave and was just asked him, can my daughter come and join your team? And he was just like, yeah, we know her. Of course, you can kind of come over. But the setup, I guess, was kind of similar. There wasn't many girls, other black girls in the team. I would say throughout me playing from under 14 straight to under 16s, I'd say it's probably me and another player who was the only two black girls at the time. I think there's a big difference now to seeing that. For instance, my team that I coach with is a vast difference of very different multicultural backgrounds in terms of there's black, Asian, whites, mixed race. There's all different types. Whereas at the time, I don't think many black girls actually played football or didn't want to play football for whatever reason. So I think, yeah, it was. I think at the time I didn't really care too tough. I think looking back on it, maybe because I'm slightly reserved person in general, that it might have had an impact. If there were other people where it felt more inclusive, maybe that I probably would have had a different experience. But I don't think I took it. I didn't really care. I think I just wanted to play football, to be honest. Yeah.
It's good. So I mean, it's good, I think, for you that your passion for the game overrode anything else, that any other sort of what we'd call, I guess, external influences, and that that didn't stop you. I think you go on to talk about your coaching and the fact that there's a much more diversity within the sport now, and as you say, you yourself are coaching. And do you find that the girls that you're working with feel like, certainly like the girls, the Asian girls or the black girls, they relate to you a bit more because you're a person of color yourself, or there's no you don't feel any difference in terms of how how open they may be as a person, and maybe the things that they may talk to you about, just based on your experiences, or trying to gain from your experiences and understand where you are within the game as well at the moment. Quite a few bits in there.
I do think that is a part of it. I do think definitely if you see someone, as I tell them, I still play football. So you're seeing someone who still plays football telling you what to do, especially if they look like you as well, is always a bonus. I think the fact that I'm still quite young and a female, I think that's rare to even have that in girls football as well as just football in general. So having that as well, I think they can relate to. They feel more open to talk to me about, I don't know, stuff they wouldn't do with a male coach who's much older, middle-aged or something. They might hold back and not really want to express how they feel. I try and keep it open and stuff as well, if they do have problems and stuff, to come to me. And I feel like that probably does play a part in that, where they see me as someone they can relate to and just have a general chat. Obviously, there's, boundaries. Can't chat to me like their mate. But,
and I know when
yeah.
you're saying middle-aged coaches, you're referring to Steve. So I'll just highlight that there.
Well, I didn't want to. Well, I did wonder. I did wonder.
I just want to ask a quick question, because you've already, you've highlighted that you've gone through playing, you've moved teams, you've gone to Luton Ladies, and they must have done something right because they still got you now. So so the thing that I wanted to ask you is not necessarily football directly related, but in terms of any transferable skills or lessons that you found. Okay, let me rephrase that. What lessons have you learned from playing football that you've managed to transfer to your everyday life, or what has anything like influenced you as a person, do you think, through playing football?
Yeah, I would say you have to work hard to get what you want. I would say football is it's a like a up and down. Everybody thinks they deserve a place. Everyone thinks they deserve a position. They deserve to start. And I feel like through football, you have to work hard to prove that. And I think in life, that's the same thing. You have to work hard to prove that you should be where you are. So I think taken from that is probably the most important thing, is to work hard, whether you want to or not. I think sometimes when you're training, you don't really want to be there. In games, you're losing. You don't really want to. You don't want to really work as hard as you are if you're winning. But if you keep, I think if you work hard, it will better yourself and show others that you can do it wherever, regardless of the situation. So yeah, I think
I think
that.
I think that's an outstanding message in terms of talking about this working hard, but not only this, because it's a conversation I had a player with the other day around talking about homework, and this idea that football can actually teach you this idea of working hard, but actually working hard when you necessarily don't want to, or you don't feel like doing it.
Yeah.
Building that self-discipline. So I think that's a really powerful message. And the other question I want to ask you, just about this journey. So we're kind of building with it now. So you've obviously gone on to play for Luton. What was it that made you coach then?
So my brother, well, I've got two younger brothers. So my brother just below me, he was coaching before me, and he was head of the girls section at a club at Luton Allstars. And a player just suddenly, not a player, a coach just suddenly quit on him. So he just asked me, "Oh, do you mind just like taking this team for a minute, and this girls team?" And I was like, "I don't think coaching's for me. I'm not going to do it," kind of thing. And then a week passed, and he asked me again, like, "Oh, I just need someone to come to this game. Can you just come to this game and oversee it or something?" And I said, "Okay, I'll come and look." And then I think he was just like, "Oh, do you want to do the training session or just go watch the training session? And then eventually was like, just take it for the rest of the season. Like I think it was about February, so obviously the season's up until about May, but it was development at that time, so they had not a game every week. And he was like, oh, just do it for the rest of the season, and then you can just be done after that. So I was like, okay, then I'll do it for that then. And then, you know, here I am now. At the end of it, he was just like, oh, you're going to stay on. If you're going to stay on, you're going to have to do your level 1 if you're going to carry on. So I went to do my level 1, and yeah, I've been coaching ever since. So that was about 4 years ago, I think.
And is there you know, so you know, we talk about you know, you talked about the love of the game, of playing the game, and that the buzz that you might get from playing. Do you get a similar feeling when you're coaching?
Yeah, similar but different. I think when they do something, or you teach them something in a training session, and then the next game or a game after, without even just like telling them or reminding them, they do it, you just get that satisfaction or like reward. You just feel so good. So it's kind of like it's a bit different to playing it, because it's not really a self, like, I feel like when you play it, it's kind of more selfish. Like, you're happy because you scored, or you're happy because you assisted. It's more like a selfish kind of feeling. Whereas when you're coaching, it's kind of like, I've helped them do this, and I've helped the team, and I've kind of enhanced them as a player. So it's a different kind of a feeling, but I think it's probably better than playing, to be honest.
Wow,
Not
that's
sure about
a
that.
Feeling wise.
That is a powerful statement. I think we can see where your you know, your career would be destined when you finish playing. I think you're obviously destined for quite a long career in coaching, if you're getting that sense of achievement. I think it's probably that sense of achievement actually is what you're feeling when the team that you know do something that you've tried to show them, and that you've coached. And it's, you know, as coaches, I think we've all experienced that at some point. Well, we try to think we've all experienced it at some point,
Yeah.
maybe once or twice in a season, maybe. But we can come on to that further in the chat, maybe.
No, I think one time they done it, and I literally celebrated on the touchline, like thinking that we just scored a goal, and it literally was just like a cross or an overlap that I've taught them, and it's just like, oh my God, they done it without even asking them to do it. So even if we lost that game, I told them I was still happy because, you know, you took it into the game, kind of thing.
Yes, yeah. It's when they start shouting back at you from the pitch. Did you see that? Did you see what? Did you see that we did that? You know, that thing that you tried to get us to do, where we just did it. And you're like, yeah, that's
Yeah, you lost
that's
the ball
great.
there. Can try and get it back.
Yeah, no, it's good stuff. It's good.
Yeah.
Okay.
Super. And this is one of the last things, and then obviously, Steve, if you want to add anything, you can. Just want to talk about the impact of individuals on your journey so far. And you know, I don't want to blow his trumpet too much, but I think you know, Steve's probably had a big impact on you as an individual. Just for context for anyone listening, Steve's currently the first team coach at Luton Ladies. So you know, I mean, feel free to mention Steve and whoever else, but what kind of, you know, you don't have to though. Don't worry about it too much. But what kind of impacts have individuals had on your journey so far? Like, are there specific impacts that they've had
As a player, would you say?
as a player or a coach?
Okay. As a it's kind of a hard question, actually.
Well, I mean, you mentioned your brother, like, you know, bringing you into coaching.
Yeah.
You know, just sort of, I don't know if he might have seen a spark in you that meant that he felt that maybe, even though you didn't know it yourself, that you had the you know, the personality or the key skills and attributes to be a coach, and that you didn't really realize that you probably had yet. So the key was actually just getting you involved and getting you into the game. And obviously, I think, you know, in terms of the example that you gave in the way that he kind of got you involved in coaching, certainly from the coaching's perspective, you know, would you see that I would say maybe he's certainly a key influence on your starting you on your coaching journey. And I know, well, he says he's quite supportive
Gonna love it,
of
innit?
the
Yeah, don't
journey.
ignore the playing journeys. That's not true.
Well,
But
no, we should discuss that really, because now is be a perfect opportunity for you
have it
to
out in open.
commit that. Yeah, to commit that to tape. That, you know, all these rumours about how he's influenced your playing style and all the all the positive things that you do. So you could, you're welcome to out him at this moment in time.
But the stuff I don't do, that's not him, is it? No.
Apparently not.
Yeah. So my brother, just for everyone, my brother has recently joined the coaching staff at Luton. So there's a running joke apparently on the sidelines that anything good I do, he says, yeah, I taught her that. And then anything I don't do, he's like, come on, why are you not doing it or whatever? You should have shot there. So I think that's the running joke. Well, you're overplaying it, I get. But yeah, definitely from a coaching point, I would say he has influenced me. Even now, as I've been coaching for the last 3 years, if there's something more time, if I don't know what to do or if I'm in a situation, he's the first person I go to ask for questions on how do I handle this, or I'm stuck on this. What's the best way of delivering this coaching or display or whatever? I think, yeah, he definitely is a role model in that sense. And even though he is younger than me, I don't take that into consideration because I feel like his knowledge of football is really good, really high. So he's gonna love that, but I'll give it to
Well,
him.
you haven't named him. You haven't
Oh yeah,
named him.
that's true. No one knows it. I've got two brothers as well, so it could be any one of them. Yeah, my brother Miles. He is
So
very
anytime you want
knowledgeable.
to commit his name to tape. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I'll definitely says he's a role model in terms of my coaching and where I am, and maybe he did see something. I personally didn't think I would be a coach because I'm not outgoing. I'm not that type of generic coach you see on the touchline of shouting and telling people kind of what to do and stuff like that in that expressive, extroverted way. But maybe girls' football is different, and that's why I do enjoy the women's side of the football because it is different. We do have to take the games differently in terms of the players and how we communicate to them. So maybe he took that into consideration and saw that and knew that, especially with younger players, it needed that side of it. And I do know the game of football as well, so that's always a plus.
I want to throw in a question to Steve now, because I think that's a really, really powerful bit that you've just spoken around, having that influence on you. So Steve, as you know, Steve is one of the FA coach mentors within Bedfordshire. Now, Steve, I want to leave you with my favourite quote of mentoring, which is, a mentor is someone who sees more talent and ability within you than you see in yourself, and helps bring it out of you. Now, we always talk about reflection, and we talk about, within the mentoring, you might talk about building, I don't know, your technical knowledge, or, you might reflect on your social outcomes of sessions, etc., etc. But actually, how important is it for, a mentor, like Leyah's just mentioned around, it's not necessarily just this part, or around, she's like Leyah, sorry, has just mentioned around, it's not necessarily all the time that it's got to be someone that's outgoing, it's got to be someone that's loud, someone that's shouting, but actually they've discovered something in them, and like you said, they've seen something in them, and they've helped them bring it out. So how big of an impact is that within mentoring, do you think?
Well, I think that's massive. I think if you reflect back on the other element that Leyah just mentioned around her coaching style and her delivery, being someone that's not very outgoing, but actually is making a massive impact on the players that she works with, and she just exuded a sense of pride, not in a goal that was scored, but in an action that was taken within a game that reflected a learning that took place away from the game. So something where, you know, she's tried to impart some knowledge on the players, and those players have carried that out. And you can tell by the way that she's spoken that actually her match day management and her match day style wouldn't be such that it'd be like, right, pass it in there and get round the outside. So she's actually having to coach that, or not even coach that, but, you know, basically talk them through the game so they're actually conducting those actions. So it shows the impact that someone can have by being positive, but also by inspiring. So, you know, the players obviously see her as someone, as an inspirational person to look up to, and to want to please, to you know, to reach those goals that she sets. And two of the reasons I think for that are clear. So one is, as you say, she's already said she's, you know, she's fairly young. So in terms of relating back to the players, you know, what age, I'm not sure what age group the players are that you work with, Leyah, but
Under 14s.
you know, the under 14. So the relative age gap is, you know, for example, if I go and coach them, the relative age gap between myself and those 14s is massive. Whereas, you know, they see Leyah as someone who's similar in age, not similar, but, you know, closer to them in age, but also is still playing, you know, so, and still playing within the club that they're representing. So they can see someone from the first team at the top level within that club that's taken their time to come out and share that knowledge and to share that everything that she's learned. So that's the first thing. And the second thing, obviously, I think is key, is that within the female game, she's a female as a coach, and that is just going to be inspiring immediately. That's and for young female players, that will be an inspiration immediately to have that. When I had my youth players within Luton, we had the first team skipper used to come down and watch the games, and immediately the impact on the players and the impact on the performance, the levels just went up, because look, there's someone that's, you know, where we want to be, she's already there, and that's where we're aiming to get to, you know. So I think it's massive.
I think this ties really nicely in to our next section, which is going to be a little bit around Black History Month. So obviously, I think we're roughly about halfway through of celebrating Black History Month at the minute. And I think, you know, we mentioned it a few times, this idea of seeing is believing, and the idea of role models, and especially influential role models. Leyah, that you've mentioned a few. So my first question, Leyah, is around Black History Month. What is the significance of Black History Month to you?
I think it's as a Black woman, it's definitely a big significance that we've been able to have a month to celebrate our history. Not many cultures do have a specific month for that, so it is a big thing. I think I've probably taken it lightly, as many others probably have, that we haven't really done much with the months as the years have gone by, I'd say. School-wise, you see posters about Black history, but when you get into your adult years, do we do enough, I think, in our communities to make it known that, you know, this is actually our month? I think sometimes you can forget because we don't do enough. So it is a big part, but I think there's still some way to go and to make it still a big part of, you know, for myself. Because I personally, I'll say I haven't done enough in terms of utilizing this month.
I think that's really powerful, actually, to admit that. I think, you know, we can sometimes be a bit quick to jump in, you know, when people are talking about things, and pretend, not necessarily pretend, but, you know, try and say that we've done things. But actually, for me, this idea of Black History Month being a month of reflection is really powerful, because it's like you said, it gives us the opportunity not only to celebrate, but to reflect on the month so far. So Steve, I want to come to you with this as well. So what does Black History Month mean to you?
Well, I mean, I think like Leyah, you know, it wasn't something that was massively on my agenda prior to me becoming a coach mentor and looking at elements of diversity and lack of diversity and areas that could need improving. And I think that the opportunity to celebrate Black success, Black achievement, Black excellence, is something that we should be encouraging and supporting, because generally, when we talk about, like Black people, if in general within the media, wherever it's generally negative connotations. So to have a month like this and to talk about the positives, the positivity, the role models, when I was younger, I always, even I suppose subconsciously, I didn't realize, that it was something that I was doing, but I was always looking out for, the Black footballers that did really, really well, So the Ricky Hills in Luton, John Barnes at Liverpool, and Cyril Regis, and all of these players that achieved, and Chris Hughton at my own club, and I supported my club. I always supported my club, and I looked for all the good players within my club, and also the good Black players within my club. But overall, as a general, I looked at how well other Black players are doing, and that kind of went above and beyond club loyalty. And I don't know, so that may be something that was just in me, and I didn't realize that there was a special reason that I was doing that, apart from the fact that I just wanted to appreciate, another Black person that was doing really, really well. And I remember, so at school, many years ago, Daley Thompson came to our school. So Daley Thompson was massive, for Great Britain as a decathlete, and came and just represented and spoke about success and everything. And that, as a young Black kid, that was amazing to have someone of that stature doing so well and representing the country. And and obviously when I was younger, in the background that I grew up in, to have someone of colour representing the country and achieving so much for the country was fantastic. So it's things like that I think that are good, and I think that we should celebrate this month, but I think that we should also not limit it to this month. I think we should be also always looking to celebrate Black history and to Black achievement, and every achievement. It shouldn't just be, we're talking about Black history, which is great, but we should be celebrating achievement for everyone. What happens with Asian people, with where the successes are there, and in all kinds of walks of life, and celebrating all differences, and bring everything together. And I think that's how, as a society, it then doesn't just become this one month that just stands out alone, and we're just looking at it all the time. We should be always looking at it and go, you know what, that person has done fantastic, this person has done fantastic, and we're pleased that that's happening, and we want to celebrate that.
Absolutely, and what you've just said there. Just thinking about the video that the FA released today around what actually is Black History Month, and within it, Darren Moss, who we both know quite well, who works at the FA, he mentioned that Black history is all our history, and I think it's absolutely spot on, and I think he's absolutely right in that, like you said, it shouldn't just be this month, it should be every month, but like you said, we should be looking to celebrate everyone's achievements. But and my second point to that is around, you were talking around, was it Daley Thompson? Sorry, that how
I did say
how he had this like a bit of a wow factor on you when you were younger, and he come to visit you, and it was this, someone that's fantastic, you see on the TV representing Great Britain. But I actually think that through people like yourself and people like Leyah doing all the work that you do coaching wise and coaching young individuals and the young black individuals, I think actually, whilst it might not necessarily be a wow moment, whilst they turn up to a session and they go, oh wow, it's still horrible. I mean, some of them might do that, I don't know, but this idea of over time, and when they start reflecting on who really had an impact on them, who is it really that was a role model for them, who could they really identify with, and they actually look back, I think that role model and influences is going to be people like you two, which I think is going to be something that's really powerful within this idea of role models, but not necessarily role models that are at the top all the time. I think some of the best role models that we have are the ones that are out on the grass or out wherever it is and local to us, someone that we can identify with really. So I really like that analogy in terms of those different role models, the wow role models at the top, and then the ones that are working with us, that upon reflection that we sometimes go not necessarily, well, yeah, I'll say it, they'll go unsung. There are unsung heroes, because they absolutely are. So just on it, so Leyah, you mentioned around you'd like to do more around Black History Month. So my question to you then would be, so I think you get this idea of Black history is only for Black people, which is absolutely not, because like Darren Moss says, Black history is all our history. So what advice would you give to anyone that might be listening, or anyone in general, if they said to you, well, what could I do with Black History Month? What could I use it as a time to do?
That's a big question.
It is a bit.
And I don't know, if I'm being honest.
So
I feel like,
I suppose I could break it down a little bit. So let's say, for example, if you imagine you were going back to as a 14-year-old, and you've got your coaches and whatever, or your teachers or whatever, what advice would you give to them to become more inclusive, or to become more aware of different cultures? Or does that kind of make sense to?
Yeah, I'd say be open-minded in terms of see people differently. No one's the same in general. So speaking to someone from, I'll say, another culture or another background, it's the same as you would speak to someone as who you just generally just met. Like you don't know them, just talk to them, see what their interests are, and I think just talk to people how you would talk to anyone else, regardless of their background. And when you start to get to know people, then you can start relating and seeing how you can actually help there as an individual, and then after an individual as a culture, as in Black people or other people from other backgrounds. So I think just get to know or see people individually, I think first, take that step first, and then broaden that out maybe to a culture, and getting to know and open up your mind and see people as being different.
Yeah,
In that
absolutely.
sense, I think.
Yeah, I think, yeah, it's a great point. I think it's like this idea of sometimes we can get so bogged down with what we perceive to be equality, diversity, and inclusion, and we read this and we read that and we read this and we read that, and then actually at the end of the day, we're all people, we're all very similar, and especially if they're turning up to a football club, then they're there to do one thing, which is play football. But it's a great opportunity, like you said, to, rather than just be reading about this stuff, to get the real experiences of this.
Yeah.
And Steve, I know obviously we were having a chat about this the other day. How important do you think this idea around not just the theoretical side of it, but this actual real life lived experience and listening to people's voice is important within Black History and Black History Month itself?
I think it's very important. It as you say, it's that lived experience, and you learn from that, and you gain your knowledge, and just a more rounded experience. It's that thing of seeing, it just goes back to what we've said, and it may be a mantra, but it's, if you see it, you can be it. And if you see people's lived experiences, then that's an experience that you want, that you may want for yourself. It's the same as, Leyah, if you take it in context, you've got Leyah coaching and imparting her experience, and that's a lived experience for the younger players that she is currently influencing. That means that at some point in the future, and you talk about unsung heroes and stuff like that, that at the moment Leyah is probably shaping their experiences and their reflections and how they see things, and therefore in 10 years time, or maybe even shorter than that, so maybe they're under 14, so they may go on in, like, when they're 16, someone may be really inspired now, as soon as they're 16 they choose to start on a coaching journey based on the experience that they've had. So yeah, I think it's very important. To a few years back we had the experiences, and we reflected within this period on Brian, the Steen brothers coming to Luton, and their experience of just breaking into the Luton team and the Luton squad, and how at that time it wasn't inclusive. No matter what we want to think, it wasn't inclusive, and they suffered lots of racism. But you need to have allies, and the biggest ally that they had at the time was the manager, who just point blank said, I will not accept this. And the players had to understand that this is diversity is important, and that is how the Luton team was going to evolve, and they had to get on board, and like the Steens had to adapt. They had to work out what battles to fight, and it was a very illuminating presentation of what it was like at the time, for those brothers to break in, and for the other black players that were breaking through into the Luton team at the time, because it's not, it's never going to be just like a, this fantasy. There's always going to be some kind of, setbacks, and it's how you respond to those setbacks and how you, build yourself up from that. And that's what they showed us. They had those setbacks, and they just said, right, well, our determination is to make it, and therefore we will understand which battles we can fight. We understand where we need to go, and to ultimately to get to our end goal. And that's, I think, again, that reflects back on what Leyah said a bit earlier about working hard to achieve and to be where you want to be.
Absolutely, and I love that point around how you just related that to, we asked Leyah before around, was, being the only girl playing at school, did that really affect you? But again, like you said, it was your passion and enthusiasm for the game, but that desire to work hard that got you through. And I think, I was there for the Steen brothers presentation, and I think it was absolutely amazing. And the way that they portrayed it, like you said, around, having the perseverance and the resilience to carry on, even though, what at points was happening was just unacceptable. But they had that resilience, and that for me is a real true trailblazer, and and a role model. So talking about the Steens, we're going to talk about key role models. And Leyah, and I know you mentioned it around Rachel Yankee, so that was obviously a key one for you. Were there any other key black role models for you growing up, or that you still look up to now?
In terms of players, professional players, I would say Thierry Henry. I think I mentioned him before, obviously, but yeah, definitely. I think he was the person who got me interested in football, and then interested in Arsenal as a club, and then which made me even more interested in football. So I would say definitely he was definitely a big kind of role model to look up to at that time, probably still now, even now, him taking a silence on social media and stuff to highlight, instead of deciding to take a knee, he's taken his silence on social media until there's going to be changes and stuff within the community and how we're portrayed. So I'll definitely look up to him, and as I said, my brother as well. So I think those ones were the main ones, I think.
I know obviously you mentioned Thierry Henry, and we'll name check your brother Miles, because he hasn't been name checked yet. And I think, obviously, as you say, as a role model, I think he at least deserves that. And I won't hear the end of it, but never mind. But beyond football, would you say that are there any other role models that you feel have shaped your life and shaped you as a person?
As a person, I would say, I don't know if there's role models. I kind of grew up in a big community in terms of like, I grew up in church, so I know loads of people who we call aunties and uncles and stuff like that. And I think just being grown up in that kind of community, you've always got someone to look up to, in that sense, females as well as black females and black males, and in the professions as well, on what they do outside of that. You kind of look up to them in that sense as well, I think. Just generically, I wouldn't say in a way that shapes you, but you look at them and think, I kind of see them in that light, and I kind of want to do the same or be similar to them. I think in that sense of looking up to someone, I think, yes. I don't know, in terms of shaping me.
But would you not say that in that respect, they are kind of shaping you? Because if
Yeah.
by looking up to them and thinking, you know what, I'd like to be them, or I'd like to be like that person, that isn't in effect shaping you, because it's kind of steering you in a direction. Because obviously you can have positive role models, you can have negative role models, and if you brought up in an environment, for example, that's away from church, and you might have negative influences that are leading you down in a negative direction, then that person shapes you again, because those are those experiences that become negative experiences and shape the person you become. So even subconsciously being in that environment and looking up to these people and calling them aunties, uncles, and seeing what they're achieving and thinking, you know what, I'd like to do something like that, or I'd like to have a bit of that. That is making those formative experiences that are helping to guide you and to shape you as a person, and the experiences that help to shape you, the person that you become.
Yeah, I guess it's just, as you were saying before, seeing is kind of achieving or believing. You kind of see it and think, oh wait, it can be done, or
Yeah.
they're doing this with their life in terms of professions and stuff like that. I could do it as well. So yeah, I guess it is kind of shaping you unconsciously.
Brilliant. Just going to move on now to what we call the future of football. So this is around, so we've kind of looked at your journey so far to where you are now as a player and a coach, and we're going to kind of look forward. So my first question is for you, more so as an individual, is Steve's kind of alluded to it already, but where do you see yourself going forward? So obviously you still got your playing career ahead of you, but what would you like to do within the game going forward?
I think after football, I do want to get into coaching probably. I know people don't aspire to be an assistant or anything, but I think my role, I think I could be like a good second person. I don't think everyone has to be the first. And I think I probably would aspire to go as high as I can in an environment within women's football, because that's my passion. And then adults, eventually hitting the adults, and becoming a coach in that way, I think is my end goal. Don't know how far, but
No, I think you're an outstanding individual. From speaking to you from a few moments, and I think parts of your journey would suggest that you're on very good footing to do so in regards to, we talked about this resilience and this determination and this idea to work hard even when you don't want to. So I think you're a very good setting to do so. The thing that I really like about that is, you talked around, everyone wants to be the first, well, what they would class as the first person or the person at the front. And this is the idea of that, like you said, you've recognized about how you could be most influential. And it might not necessarily be at the front, or what would be deemed as the front, but actually through however you think you would, as someone possibly that might be doing stuff more so in the background. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I kind of, from what I've got from coaching, I do like the player interaction and, you know, trying to help people one-on-one. And I think maybe as a main coach, you probably won't get that time to do that because you obviously have to do tacticals and stuff like that. Whereas as a second, you probably get more time to have that one-on-one with a player and have that kind of relationship on where you don't have to be Mr. or Mr. Nice Guy, or not the nice guy, where you're could be the person they can come to in that sense. I think as in the second person, I think that's what I enjoy in that kind of coaching role.
Yeah, I think I'm quite excited to see where your journey takes you, and see that in action.
Got a few
So
years.
yeah.
Still playing.
um, so the next thing is around, you've given us some brilliant key messages and takeaway messages, but what would be, if you, I think this is the best way to put it. If you were talking to, your 15-year-old self now, who's about to go into playing, adult football shortly, and is, shortly, well, in the grand scheme of things, going to be coaching, what advice would you give that individual?
To be confident, I would say. Kind of believe in yourself. Because I would say at that time, when I was 16, I did move on to the adults game, and shortly after that, I did like stop playing because I wasn't confident in myself. And when it gets to adults, I think it is a whole different game to when you're at youth, when you're with your age mates and your friends and stuff like that. And when you're hitting to adults where you're playing with women, and if you're not comfortable, if you're not confident, then it can have effect on the team, and that's when the team kind of, gets upset or something. So just I play, if I was myself back in there, just be confident in yourself, and just, I don't know, carry on enjoying how you used to enjoy football, carry that into, I don't know, adults football, and just enjoy it. And yeah, I think that's what I'll take into it.
Yeah, it's a great message, and the idea of, it was clearly you talking to a young version of yourself there, where you're talking about, enjoy the football and be confident. But I think actually, I think young players sometimes can put too much of a pressure and ownership on themselves, whereas the reason that we all, and it boils down to it, why do we play football? Why do we participate in football? Why are we involved? It's because we love it.
Yeah.
So I want to move that on to Steve, actually. So Steve, obviously, as a first team coach, Leah's obviously said what Leyah, sorry, said what she would like to give advice to for a younger player. What advice would you give to coaches then that are dealing with younger players?
I think I've always tried to treat the younger players personally. I've tried to treat the younger players as adults and not patronize them, and and understand that they have their own thoughts and beliefs and understanding of the game, and you need to allow them to express themselves, that, and encourage that and nurture that, and try to give them the opportunity to to find a platform to do that for themselves, rather than imposing for what you want on them. So kind of living vicariously through these players, trying to reenact your own career. So how can you get the best out of the players that you're working with? Essentially, understand the players, understand their needs, understand that they're all different. They're all players are different, and you'll need to relate to them all differently in how you manage and coach those players. And people will be at different levels, and they also have different motivations for why they play. And so understand, as soon as you understand those motivations, then you're able to connect to them a lot more, and by doing that, obviously you'll help them to achieve more within the game, so achieve their own full potential, and to enjoy it a lot more, to want to stay in the game.
Super, absolutely. And then this is kind of the, it's a bit of a wide question, and you can take it any way that you see fit. In terms of the future of football, Leyah, what do you see that? What would be your ideal as a future of football? So the example, well, the scenario used last time with our previous guest, Tony, I said, if you were to walk through your club and, you've got loads of games going on, what would the future of football look like for you?
The future of football for me, I would say I would love for football to be seen as like tennis is. So you've got the women's game, you've got the men's game, and they're both respected equally. I would love for it to be like that. Whereas, it doesn't matter who's playing, you want to watch. That's what I would love for the future to be. Obviously, diversity as well. I think if you look at I'll talk about women's football because that's my passion again. But if you look at the England's women team, not much diversity, I think, as well. So I think going forward, I would love to see some sort of diversity within the women's English team to, reflect on what is being played around the world, around England. Teams are diverse, and I think it could be reflected within the bigger teams as well. And I think, most importantly, it's just kind of seeing the games as equal. They might not be the same, but they're people, they're the same or in their right, I would say, in each game. They're in, yeah, I'll say.
I think that's a very powerful message in terms of this idea of equality and diversity that you mentioned. I think that's really powerful. So, Steve, I'm going to ask you a question around, as someone involved within the women's game, what advice would you give? Because you talk about allies. I'd like to think that everyone that's involved within football, within the women's game, is an ally of progress of this equality, and like Leyah mentioned it to tennis, and having that same recognition. What advice then, Steve, would you give to someone who possibly doesn't have those thoughts and opinions at the minute?
Just stop comparing the two games. Don't compare the games, and stop looking for for reasons to hate. Just if you don't have to want to enjoy it. Like, if there's enough people out there that are interested in women's football for it to thrive and to be a sport. It's a growing game. The amount of girls that play and the amount of women that are playing and involved, it's fantastic to see. It's really good that Sky are now giving it a platform, because ultimately men's football is only massive because of the exposure that it has. It has massive exposure, massive support, massive sponsorship. So, and this in a similar way, if we liken it to Leyah's analogy of comparing it to men's and women's tennis, and then both being seen as a spectacle in their own right to be watched, again, that is about both tours or tournaments being given similar or equal exposure. So once women's football is given equal exposure to men's football and given an equal platform, and which is Sky are ideally placed to help that happen. And this season you've seen them trying to push that on and promote that, and a lot of good stuff now happening in terms of analysis and stuff like that. Then you'll see the perception of the game change. But like all things that are we have an issue with, racism and various other bits and pieces, it's about education, so just a little bit of education for people, and being a bit more open-minded, and you'll see progress, and you'll see it for what it is. I personally, I love being in women's football, because the players that I work with are so much more receptive to wanting to be coached and wanting to improve. I don't, when I was working with boys, and like, everything was why, wouldn't do that, why, what I mean? Whereas the girls are just like, wouldn't do that, okay, sweet, no worries, we'll give that a go, so it's a great game, and it's progressing, and it's building, and it's growing massively. So yeah, that'd be my message, I think.
Perfect. And this is the final question, Leyah. And it's a bit of a heavy one, is to so to speak. But take your time with it.
Okay.
What would you like your legacy to be within the football world? I know you've obviously still got a hell of a long way in front of you, but what would you want your legacy to be?
I would say, playing wise, that I would say I always tried my best, regardless. I think that's important to me, that it's seen that I'm always kind of trying at least to get to do 100% of what I can. I'll say, coaching wise, that I did all that I can to try and help them as a player. And although I don't get it right every time, but the intent was there to try and get you to the best place or best player you can be. I think that would be fine for me.
I think that's some legacy to leave, and I'm sure you will leave it. Yeah, that's powerful. I like that. It's that idea around intent. You said that as a player, you'd like to leave that legacy of, you always tried your best, but it's always the intent that was there. And it's the same with the coaching. So I think that's fantastic. A huge thank you for coming on.
No
And
worries.
a big thank you, Steve, for organising this and co-hosting with me.
No problem.
So I really appreciate that. Just before we go, there's a few opportunities that I just want to make everyone aware of. I appreciate this might be a little bit late notice, but applications for the Inclusion Advisory Group at Bedfordshire FA are open. Talking from a coaching perspective, quite lucky with Steve on the call today. So Steve and I are the coach mentors for Bedfordshire, and we're looking to support Black and Asian coaches within the game. So if you feel like you are someone that would benefit from the scheme, what I'll do is I'll pop mine and Steve's email on the screen now. Please feel free to email us and just highlight what what club you're from, and how you hope the scheme would help you, and me and Steve will get back to you. And the last one is, like I always say, listening to stories like Leyah's is always inspiring. So if you want to get involved, and you're not really sure where to start or where to begin, then please email us at support@Bedfordshire FA, and we will support you through any way that we can. Thank you both once again, and we will see you in the next episode.